Welcome to The Know. I'm Ashley Jenkins.
I'm Mica Burton.
Everyone's focused on Mass Effect Andromeda getting raked over the coals for the last week, but throughout that game's goofy facial animations, we've had a little bit of a different review controversy that may have been missed by some with Marvel's Iron Fist show on Netflix.
This time, the controversy is boiling down to viewers and critics with some fairly wide-ranging differences of opinion regarding Marvel's latest Defender series.
This sounds so familiar somehow.
Featuring Kung Fu billionaire Danny Rand, aka Iron Fist.
Now that the show is out, viewers seem to be having a very different experience with the show than critics, who universally panned it. This is leading some to wonder, were the critics wrong about the series? Did they have a grudge? What's going on?
But first, let's back up a bit. So starting a few weeks ago, review outlets began posting their first impression of Iron Fist, which covered the first 6 episodes of the series.
Much to fans' dismay, those reviews were, well, they weren't good.
Oh, God,
and
no.
that's putting it lightly. Polygon said in its early review, "I'm not surprised that Iron Fist isn't a comedy. I'm surprised that it's so bad, and it is laughably bad." So they really weren't pulling any punches there.
And Variety agreed, saying it takes forever for anything to happen on Iron Fist. And as it stumbles along, the uninspired production design, unexceptional cinematography, and painful dialogue fail to distract the viewer from the overall lack of depth, detail, or momentum. Good luck, bingers. Getting through 2 episodes was a challenge.
Do you think they liked it?
I really don't know what they're trying to say with this review.
It only got worse from there. Others complained about Danny Rand, the action sequences, the overall boringness of the show. When all the very salty dust settled, Iron Fist was left with an abysmal 37 on Metacritic and a blistering 19% on Rotten Tomatoes. That made it by far the worst thing that Marvel has ever published in terms of critical reception. Prior to that, the worst Marvel Studios reviews were reserved for Thor: The Dark World, and that was 66%. Everyone thought that was like, oh,
Wow.
worst thing ever. Well, now you've got a new floor to fall through.
That 19% on Rotten Tomatoes also puts Iron Fist somewhere between the level of critically panned comic book property Superman 3, ouch, at 26%, and 1997's Spawn at 18%. So
Wow.
holy crap.
I mean, so this has basically got to be the worst show of all time, right? That's what it sounds
That's
like.
what it sounds like.
In terms of their other TV outings, Daredevil seasons 1 and 2 were 98 and 76% respectively, so still quite good, although I would agree the first season was definitely better, although
Yes.
The Punisher was the best thing about the second season, while Jessica Jones ended up at 93%. Deservedly so.
Absolutely.
Luke Cage ended up at 96%, which is weird because I didn't enjoy it nearly as much as either Daredevil or Jessica Jones. But hey, maybe that's why I'm not a professional critic. So, all things said and done, yeah, that's considerably worse than any of the other TV properties they've released recently.
But Friday's debut of the TV show finally put it in the hands of fans, and so far the reports from the viewers are a bit different than what we've gotten from the reviews. Viewers have weighed in on Rotten Tomatoes with their own takes of the show, giving it a very positive 85% rating with more than 5,000 scores, so
Yeah, there is a little bit of a disconnect there between the fans and the critics. And since the show debuted this weekend, we also saw a lot of commentary on Twitter with fans tweeting that the show isn't as bad as it was depicted by critics. Fans in the Defender subreddit are also saying that while it's admittedly somewhat disappointing compared to Marvel's previous TV attempts, it's not nearly as bad as it was made out to be by critics.
it's generally not out of the ordinary to see at least a little bit of disparity between what critics think and what fans think in almost any medium.
There's a range, yeah.
There's a range, yeah. Batman v Superman, for instance, has a 63 audience rating next to its 27 critic score. But 19 to 85% is just a little bit, it's a big gap for this TV show. Just large, very large.
Is it a new record?
I think so.
You won!
Clap it out!
Iron Fist, you win. To be fair, some of that's probably due to angry fans trying to offset the negative scores with the overly positive ones. It's sort of the inverse of what we saw with Breath of the Wild on Metacritic, where fans were brigading the user scores with low scores because they felt like the game had been scored too highly by critics.
Scores are just an
Scores are a
absolute
thing,
mystery.
man. Scores are a thing.
A big part of the disparity with Iron Fist seems to have been caused in part by some of the backlash surrounding the show's main character. A number of critics online believe that Marvel had whitewashed Iron Fist prior to the show's debut, which may have factored into some of the review scores, thanks to that good old herd mentality.
Now, if you are blissfully unaware of the various discussions concerning whitewashing over the last year or so, there have been similar complaints with Ghost in the Shell. Whitewashing is when historically non-white characters in a film or show are replaced with with Caucasian actors. Now, we're not going to comment too much one way or another about whether or not the show is an example of whitewashing, although it's worth noting that Danny Rand was Caucasian in the comics as well, so they're not replacing a character with a white dude.
The character is a white dude.
Just bringing it up as a frame of reference for the discussion and why critics may have had a little bit of an edge against the show in the first place. Maybe they didn't know the material.
Regardless of whether or not those criticisms were valid, they definitely stuck in critics' minds and clearly showed up in more than one review.
Slate wrote in its review, "I can think of no reason Iron Fist would have been worse off for giving the part to an Asian actor. I also have no hope that would have made this show comprehensible or exciting."
Wow.
I can think of one reason.
Yeah?
He wasn't an Asian character.
There you go. The Atlantic criticized it along similar lines, writing, "Iron Fist decided unwokeness." I can't believe those words just left my mouth.
Yeah, this is a quote. You have to say it.
Iron Fist decided unwokeness is notable, particularly when Danny lectures Colleen, who is of East Asian descent, on the right way to channel her internal force. But it's just one of a list of flaws, with Jones's miscasting the most obvious issue.
All those negative reviews have prompted responses from all over the place, including Finn Jones, the current actor playing main character Danny Rand, who I didn't realize for a long time. So he's Game of Thrones, right?
Wait, what?
He's in Game of Thrones, and guess who else is in Game of Thrones?
Who?
Colleen.
Interesting.
She's one of the Sand Snakes. Jones used the typical "it's not for the critics, it's for the fans" response that typically gets parroted around whenever a comic book movie allegedly sucks. We saw that happen with Batman v Superman as well.
And now even one of Iron Fist's original creators has weighed in on the debate. Speaking with the inverse, the co-creator Roy Thomas said about the whitewashing controversy, "I have so little patience for some of the feelings that some people have. I mean, I understand where it's coming from. You know, cultural appropriation, my God. It's just an adventure story. Don't these people have something better to do than worry about the fact that Iron Fist isn't Oriental? Or whatever word? I know Oriental isn't the right word now either."
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Yeah, that'll quiet the critics. At the end of the day, the consensus from users seems to be that while Iron Fist isn't quite as terrible as critics made it out to be, it's got a fair amount of legitimate problems that make it not nearly as enjoyable as Marvel's other TV shows. Still, it might be worth a watch if you really, really love the other Defenders series. Maybe as a background watching. So I've been watching it. The critics aren't wrong. It moves insanely slowly, and it's not nearly as compelling as the other Marvel shows. That said, it's watchable. So it's not like 18%. That makes it seem like it's a crime against television as a medium.
Right.
It's not that. It's just not exceptional.
It's just not your first go-to.
Right. It's like what you watch while you're doing laundry or something.
Well, then there you have it.
There you go.
What do you guys think of all the back and forth over Iron Fist? Were the critics wrong? Is the show any good? Was that quote heinous that I had to say?
Which one?
Both of them! Let us know in the comments.
And for future updates on Marvel heroes, like this video and subscribe to the Now.
Why did I get both of the horrible quotes?
I don't know.
Why did I get, Oriental or whatever, and also unwokeness?
Just knowing those were coming up was like this. Oh boy. Oh boy.
I just...
At first I didn't know that was a quote, and I just thought you were saying it.
Oh no!
Yeah,
You're like, whoa! No, the quote of like, Oriental...